5 seconds to insertion. Bomb located by Op 4.
Hey, is that Rainbow Six Siege? Yeah, it is. I've been trying to get back into it recently. It is my favorite video game of all time, you know. Yeah, of course I know. We're the same person, remember? Anyways, how is it revisiting the greatest video game of all time? Man, honestly, it's been kind of rough. What do you mean? Well, it's been a while since I played, so I don't know half these new maps, I don't know what half the new operators do, plus I'm solo queuing in a random lobby, and it's always just kind of a die roll what kind of people you end up with, you know what I mean? Like, either you end up with a bunch of people who don't care at all and they're just here to do the memes, or you end up with a bunch of sweaty tryhards who are taking the casual mode too seriously. I don't know, man. I just miss the days when we could get our friends together to play Rainbow Six Siege. Those were so much fun. With these people online, you never know what to do, and plus, you know my aim, it's terrible. I can't land a shot to save my life. I don't know, I feel like the game has changed so much since we used to love it back in the day. I just wish there was a simpler way to play Rainbow Six Siege, you know? Oh, so you mean like the board game?
All friendly have been eliminated.
Wait, what did you just say? Look at this. A board game? Really? What's that supposed to mean? Oh, come on, man. How am I supposed to believe that a board game can compete with a top-of-the-line multiplayer video game? Alright, well, let me explain it to you. So, as you know, Rainbow Six Siege is a popular online video game based upon Tom Clancy's novels. In that game, 2 teams of 5 players, attackers or defenders, play against each other in several short rounds. The attackers have to infiltrate the map and complete an objective, and the defenders have to keep them from doing that for a certain amount of time. Every player picks a unique operator, who brings a certain tactical ability or gadget to the team. The video game is one of the most popular of its kind, due to its limitless replayability from both the operator pool and the destructible environments, which creates a dynamic kind of gameplay that is one of the most unique and engaging multiplayer games on the market. Six Siege, the board game, is based on that video game. In this game, designed by Carlos Quintana and developed by Jean-Baptiste Gaillet and Marc Legroy, only 2 players will play against each other. Each player will control the entire team of 5 operators. 1 player will be the attacker, and 1 player will be the defender. To win the game, the attacker has to infiltrate the map and complete an objective, and the defender has to stop them from accomplishing that for 5 game rounds. Both players assemble a squad of 5 operators, each of which bring a certain tactical ability or gadget to the table. In a round, players will begin alternating activating 1 to 3 of their operators and performing various actions. When activating an operator, a player can perform a total of 1 movement action and 2 other separate actions. Actions include the movement action. A movement action will grant you and your operator 5 points of movement. It takes extra movement points to walk through destroyed walls, obstacles, or windows. You can also spend 1 movement point to lean your operator or unlean them. You can also run. A run action will grant you extra movement points equal to the sprint value on your operator. You also have access to a tactical inventory with a variety of gadgets. A tactical gadget action lets you use one of these, and there are 2 kinds, throwable and deployable. Throwable gadgets, like grenades, can be placed up to 6 spaces away. Deployable gadgets, like claymores, are placed on the operator's square or an adjacent one. Operators also have their own unique gadgets or actions. These gadgets work the same as the tactical gadget actions, but usually with fun twists. If an operator's card has the word action next to an ability, then you can use an action to perform that ability. You'll notice there are multiple areas around the map that are destructible. These walls, gadgets like cameras that are placed onto heavy walls, these doorways and barricades or windows. If any of your operators have line of sight to a square that contains a destructible element or multiple destructible elements, and your operator has the matching destruction rating or higher, lowest is yellow, then orange, then red, then you can spend an action to remove that piece from the board. Shooting. At any point on your turn, you can declare a shoot action by declaring a target and the conditions of that shot, range, cover, that kind of thing. Your opponent can challenge you on any part of this claim, disputing whether you have line of sight or whether or not they have cover, that sort of thing. If no challenge is made, the defender of the shot agrees with the terms, then the shoot action is performed immediately. If a challenge is made, that being the two players disagree with the terms of the shot, then they'll take out one of the measuring tools and confirm who is correct. Now, the person who is right can either give themselves an advantage or give their opponent a disadvantage. This would affect either your timer or your action economy. If the shot is still legal after a challenge is made, the shooter does have line of sight to the target, then you roll the dice to deal damage. The shooting operator counts how many spaces away the target is and then consults their gun's range values on the top of their card to determine which dice they roll. If there is this slash symbol on a die symbol, you won't roll that die if the target of the shot has cover of any kind. Finally, you'll just roll the dice, and every symbol rolled is 1 damage dealt to the shot's target. If the target has light cover, shot through an obstacle, soft wall, or a barricade, then you subtract 2 damage from the total value. If the target has heavy cover, shot behind a heavy wall, or has 2 sources of light protection, then you'll subtract 3 damage from the total. If after the shot, the damage on the operator is greater than or equal to the stamina value, your operator is removed from the game. And finally, you can spend an action on overwatching. When you overwatch, you place this overwatch marker in front of your operator facing a certain direction. This marker indicates your operator is watching everything in a 180-degree arc in front of it. If an enemy operator enters a square or finishes an action in view of this 180-degree arc, then the overwatching operator takes a free shoot action targeting that enemy operator. Oh, I get it. So that's like how in the video game when you have to plant down and hold angles to watch out for enemies. Exactly. This Overwatch action is not just a clever thing that adapts the feeling from the video game, but as you'll see, it's actually one of the key tactical considerations when you're playing all of your turns in this game. Okay, this is actually kind of sounding pretty cool. I don't know, man. I guess I just have a couple of questions. Okay, like what? Well, the video game is really fast-paced and is all about on-the-fly decision-making since you only have a couple of minutes per round. Wouldn't, in a board game, because there are so many possibilities and actions to consider, it just take away from that fast-paced feeling? I mean, knowing you'll take forever to take your turns. Isn't this game going to last, hours? And secondly, one of the key things with a video game is vertical destruction. The ability to destroy floors and ceilings to open up lines of sight. I don't really see anything like that happening in a board game. And it's kind of one of the key elements of the video game. Also, in the video game, the defense's setup is hidden to the attackers, and they have to figure out the locations of the defense operators and the locations of the defense's gadgets. That's kind of part of the game, is having to gather that information. But looking at the board, I can already see the location of all your operators and gadgets, wouldn't I? How would they fix that in the board game? Wow. Those are all really good questions, actually. Luckily for us, the board game has some really interesting and unique answers to those problems. Okay, so first I'll address the concerns about the defending team. So in the video game, neither team knows the location of each other. The attackers don't know the location of every defending operator or gadget at the start of the round. This means that, in the video game, information gathering is just as important as mechanical skill. The board game gets around this with decoy tokens. So, at the start of the game, the defending minis do not start on the map. Instead, you get 2 decoy tokens for each operator. One is the real operator's location, and the other is a decoy. You place both on the map during the setup. The attacking player knows 2 possible locations of each operator, but they won't know for sure until they scope it out with gadgets, or brave a potential shot by peeking at them with their own operators. It's a relatively simple solution, but one that presents fun tactical decisions to both teams from the beginning of the game. A good defense player can waste an attacker's time with a well-placed decoy token. Likewise, a good attacking player has to be smart on how you approach each token. Do you spend an action droning it out? Or do you peek it from behind cover and risk a shot to reveal the token? The core tension of information gathering that was present in the video game is still here, just in a slightly different flavor. Secondly, the question of vertical destruction. So, one of the key components of the video game is the ability to destroy ceilings or floors to create and open up more dynamic attacking and defending strategy opportunities. As you can see, there's only one main board with one main floor on it. There's no second or third boards for the different floors. The board game instead opts for an abstract solution. See these two sections here on the map? These spaces, 2 spaces for each side, represent the upper floor. Around the map, you'll notice that there are various entryway spaces. Everybody can use the gray entryway spaces, but only the attackers can use these blue entryway spaces. Now, you can move from these entryway spaces into one of your 2 spaces in the upper floor, and vice versa. The only limit is that you can't move up or down more than once in the same turn. For example, if this enemy operator walks downstairs and shoots another operator, they can't immediately run back upstairs in this turn. Additionally, you can overwatch from the upstairs onto these entryway spaces. And overwatching an already overwatched entryway space can trigger a firefight between 2 ops upstairs. While an abstraction, this once again leads to interesting tactical decisions throughout the game. For instance, you can only have 2 operators upstairs at a time, so which ones out of your 5 do you put there? The upstairs allows you to rotate around the map, but what if all the entryway spaces you actually need to access are being overwatched by the enemy? I can go down the stairs to get a kill on this enemy, but what if an enemy follows me down the stairs and kills me afterwards? The upstairs and the entryway space mechanics are constantly presenting you with these kinds of tactical puzzles all the time. And while vertical destruction is not something available to every operator, kind of like it is in the video game, there are a few operators who can use vertical destruction in the board game. So it is not completely cut out at all. Alright, thirdly, and maybe the most important part of the board game experience is actually how it adapts the feeling of the video game. As you know, the video game is tense because the rounds are short. You need to have time to gather info and communicate a plan and execute it, but you only have 2 to 3 minutes. So how can a board game emulate this kind of tension? Well, quite simply, they just do what the video game does. They add a timer. Each player only gets a collective 5 minutes each round to make their moves. Longer or shorter if you prefer. This is, in my opinion, the defining mechanic of Six Siege and why it works so well. In a tactical puzzle game like this, there are always the optimal moves one must make in order to succeed, and given enough time, you could always figure out those optimal moves. The thing with Six Siege, though, you don't have that kind of time. You have 5 minutes. What this leads to are exciting and tense games where each player is scrambling to make the best plans in the shortest amount of time, which inevitably leads to tactical mistakes, which leads to more exciting games. The timer is the great equalizer. No matter how much better you get at this game, and you will get better as you play, the timer can always throw you off. The added pressure is what gives the game its stakes, and it makes it so addicting and exciting. Not only does this give the game more excitement, but it also means every game will have a consistent time frame. My games always last 40 to 60 minutes. And what that means is with these short, exciting games, you can easily play multiple rounds in one sitting, and you'll often want to in order to make up for the mistakes that you just made in the previous round. Now, there is an option to play without the timer, but I don't really recommend this because, one, you're losing one of the key elements of the tactical soul of this game, and 2, a single game without a timer will last 2 to 3 hours. I think this brings up another point though. You mentioned earlier a bunch of the faults of the video game. In the video game, there are a bunch of flaws, like how the fact that your experience is often dependent on the people that you play with. When you're playing with friends and you can call and communicate and work together, it's incredible. When you load up into a random lobby by yourself, it's not ideal. Let's just leave it at that. In a game that requires coordination, solo queuing kind of wrecks the experience. The frustrating feeling of knowing a good strat and trying to get your team involved, only for them to do whatever they want, it's infuriating. There's no other way around it. One of my favorite elements of the video game is the fact that mechanical aim is not the most important element. If my aim is bad, but my game knowledge is good, I can make a positive impact for my team. That's great. However, it still sucks to completely lose gunfights every couple of minutes. And in a game with one-shot headshot, that often feels like you're walking around and suddenly you're just not playing anymore because somebody shot you. On top of this, the video game has been plagued with a cheating problem for years. I love the tactical promise that Rainbow Six Siege makes, but the nature of it being an online multiplayer game, I think, clashes with that promise. However, the board game, it can often feel like, I don't want to say the superior version, but more like the intended version of that experience. Rainbow Six Siege attempts to create a dynamic, chess-like experience, but the board game accomplishes that feeling more consistently than the video game does. With Rainbow Six, I'd say you need at least 3 to 4 friends to have the ideal experience so that you can coordinate your team. In Six Siege, you get to control the whole squad yourself. Gone is the frustration of your random teammates ignoring you or team killing you. In the video game, it can sometimes feel like no amount of game knowledge can make up for having a less than stellar aim. In the board game, you don't have to worry about that. You worry about positioning and strategy first, and if you do those well, you'll be rewarded with gunfight victories. Server issues and cheating issues? Obviously not a problem here. Sure, I mean, someone could try to cheat, but if anyone at the table knows the rules, they'll just put a stop to it. And probably never play with you again. In my opinion, the board game is able to offer the same kind of feeling and experience as the video game without any of the drawbacks or flaws. The board game feels like the fulfillment of the promise that the first Rainbow Six Siege teaser trailer made 10 years ago.
All right, set up, and on 3. 1, 2, 3! Good job, guys.
Yeah. All right, I'll get her.
Okay. Wait, shit, the wall! The wall! Right
Covering. Revive me. I got you.
It's Havoc! Wrath, he's in the bathroom!
I'm on him.
Wrath!
Shit, I missed.
Breaching. Hey, go, breach!
All right, got him. All right, I'm taking out the main entrance.
Oh, Havoc! Kitchen! Right there!
No, we got this. Get her out.
I got him! Whoa, wait! She's down! I have to revive her! Cover me!
I got you. Get out of here.
All right.
I'm serious. I'm being lit up here, Lynch. Ah, shit. He got me.
All right, I got the window.
Go.
Okay, honestly, you're kind of speaking my language here. This is kind of sounding pretty exciting. Now hold on just 1 minute. Wait, where on earth did this guy come from? I thought there were just 2 of us. Oh no, I must be getting really bored if 2 of you are appearing to me now. Oh, never mind that now. Look, this is important. All right, we get it. You've proven your point. The board game adapts the video game smartly. But what about as a game in its own right? Take away the video game aspect from it. Is this game even any good on its own? Okay, well, let's talk about Six Siege just as a game by itself then. The fact of the matter is that Six Siege, the board game, is one of the best miniature skirmish games I've ever played. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that this game is for everyone, or that everyone will like it as much as me. If you don't like dice at all, this game is not for you. If you don't like not having enough time to fully plot out your entire game bit by bit, this game is not for you. If you don't like the very real possibility that one misplay will result in a terrible game, this game is not for you. If you don't like the possibility that your minis may come off the board before you even get a chance to use them, this game is not for you. If you don't like skirmish games, this game is not for you. However, if you like tactical puzzles, if you like high-stakes adrenaline, if you like a game that requires many plays and study to excel, if you like outmaneuvering and outplaying your opponents, if you like fast-paced games, if you like a good challenge, if you like variable powers and squad building, then this game is absolutely for you. The 2 main pillars of Six Siege's design philosophy, to me, are tactical decision making and player freedom. As you'll see, every element of the design is working towards these two objectives. So let's talk about some of the different mechanics. Let's first talk about those dice actually, because I predict that this will be the first thing that people latch onto as a critique. I can hear it now. Well, if you roll to hit, then that just means that dying is based on luck. This is not true. The 3 tiers of dice are easy to parse. You will always know your chances for hitting something. Secondly, the nature of the dice lends itself to very high rolls. What I mean is that a basic shot from an op at their best range with no cover is about an 85% chance or more of outright death in one roll. How can this be fair, you wonder? Well, think about it. If the dice percentages are so high, what these dice actually do is make this game more about positioning. If you know a basic die roll with no cover is highly likely to kill you, then the game is not about running into fights and hoping to get lucky, because you're not going to get lucky. You have to move and position in such a way to always give you cover. You have to use your gadgets to give you reliable information on your opponent's position. These brutal dice actually make the game more tactical rather than random. Speaking of planning and positioning actually, let's talk about the Overwatch action. You know how earlier I was telling him that the defining mechanic of the board game is the timer? I was lying. It's actually the Overwatch action. This action is what allows you to hold down angles and defend yourself even when it's not your turn. Not only is this accurate to the feel of the video game, but it is also the key tactical tool in your tool belt to hold off the enemy, as well as one of the key considerations in how you approach each objective. Remember, the dice are highly likely to kill you, so how do you enter an objective room and complete your turn without receiving a shot from the overwatching operators in that room? Do you try to flank the overwatching operator and shoot it from behind? Maybe you throw in a smoke grenade and just walk in unseen. Maybe you could use a flashbang. You flash the enemy so it does less damage when you walk in. Or maybe you could locate the operator and shoot it through a wall. Or do you peek from cover and hope you survive the dice long enough to get a shot back? As you can see, 6 Siege presents questions like these to you every second, but it leaves it completely up to you to decide which answers to give. Any of those solutions I just listed can be viable. It only depends on how well you execute your plan. You'll never find the solution to every game or every scenario you find yourself in 6 Siege, because every game will be wildly different due to the different options you have during the setup of the game. The maps, the gadgets, the modes, and the operators. So let's actually talk about those for a second. There are 3 modes to explore, each with their own pros and cons. You've got Bomb, Hostage, and Control. Bomb is slightly more attacker favored, Hostage is slightly more defender favored, and Control kind of skews towards both. Each one provides a different challenge for both sides to engage in, and each one provides new ways to utilize each operator and gadget. In addition to the game modes, there are also ways to actually play this game with 3 and 4 players. You can either do a 2v1 or a 2v2. Now, the developers of the game did admit that these multiplayer modes were kind of tacked on at the last minute. The game was designed for 2 players primarily. However, I've played a couple of 2v2 games, and let me tell you, despite that, these modes are still really fun to play. Having a teammate to bounce off of gives the game a kind of totally different feel that is somewhat closer to how the video game feels. Now, that being said, I don't recommend that you do these multiplayer modes for your first couple of games. Let's talk about the maps though. You see, each map is wildly different from each other, each with their own quirks and challenges. For example, Consulate is a very open and tricky map to defend, but Bank is very small and has no attacker entryway spots, making it harder to attack. Oregon has this small little separate building thingy off to the side that you have to think about. Border is this big square circle with objectives just square right in the center. Every map is fun to play, and while each map seems to favor one side or the other, there's actually never a map that feels impossible to play for a certain side. While yes, Bank, for example, may be harder to attack, it's really just another puzzle that can be solved with the right tools. Changing maps also helps keep the operator roster healthy and varied. You see, some operators are better on some maps than others, and so you won't be maining a squad. You'll be constantly changing your picks to suit the map and the mode that you're playing on. Oh, and did I mention that there are destructible walls in this game? That means that any individual map will also feel different from game to game depending on which parts of that map get destroyed. Finally, the map actually becomes an integral part of setup for the defending player. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but setup is actually a part of the gameplay here. You see, at the start of the game, the defending player will have 15 minutes to set up the map according to the way they choose, placing gadgets and decoy tokens, rearranging doors and cameras, maybe even destroying walls or reinforcing walls. This means that each individual map will also always change depending on the defender's setup. Because the defender's never going to set up a map the same way twice, otherwise the attacker will easily be able to beat them because they already know what they're doing. So you always have to change up your strategy. As you can see, the variety of gameplay will never be a problem here. Even variety aside, the maps are just another facet of 6 Siege where the game gives you the freedom to interact and shape it the way that you want. Do you want to start the game with all the windows already destroyed? I mean, you can try it. Do you want to start an operator outside the building? I don't know if I'd recommend that one, but you could try it. Do you want to destroy a wall or reinforce that wall? Destroying walls gives you flexibility, but you may be more vulnerable. Reinforcing walls gives you more safety, but it also restricts your movement as well. Siege asks its players to come up with their own plan and to just try it. Another tool each player has in their tool belt are these tactical gadgets. Each player gets a certain number of them, and you must choose which ones to bring at the start of each game. Yet again, this is another area where the game gives you freedom to do what you want with. What kind of strategy do you want to employ? Do you want to be destroying the map a ton? You bring some breaching charges. Do you want to stun the enemy or close off a line of sight completely? Bring flashbangs and bring smoke grenades. Do you want to add more cameras to the map that are harder to destroy? You can bring bulletproof cameras. Do you want to be able to destroy a wall an operator is hiding behind and shoot it? Then you gotta bring impact grenades. These are just a couple of the gadgets that you have at your disposal, and each of these gadgets is useful and impactful, and using them at the right time feels so satisfying. Once again, the game provides you with the tools and asks you how you want to use them. Finally, the operators themselves. They are the stars of this game. Although, let me be clear, I think the foundational design of this game is so strong that I think it would have been good even without the operators' asymmetrical abilities. Each side has a pool of 12 operators. 30 if you count the years 1 through 5 expansions and you own those. These each provide their own stats, guns, abilities, and gadgets to use. Now, I have already mentioned numerous times how Siege presents you with tactical decisions and puzzles, and it starts right here before the game even begins with squad selection. A squad in a given game is made up of 5 of these operators, and each operator will completely change how you approach the game. And by introducing a fun little pick-ban system, you can even play a dope little minigame before the game proper even starts, where you and your opponent try to draft and counter-ban each other's operator picks. It's so much fun. Alright, let me speak about the video game one more time because I think it's an important thing to note here. The video game has been struggling with operator balance for years. Each operator is constantly getting reworked with each new season in the hopes of making all operators equally balanced, but in reality, let's be honest, in the video game, it's just impossible. There are always going to be some operators that are just simply better than others. In the board game, though, every operator is equally viable and every operator has its use. Sure, some modes and maps might work better for some operators than others, but there is never an auto pick or an auto ban in any given scenario. Drafting a team is always one of the hardest things for me to do because as I look through each of the various operator options, they're all useful and they all seem fun to play. To me, this is the sign of true game balance. But once again, the game presents you with a wide variety of tools and asks you which ones you want to bring and how you want to use them. Do you want to forsake 5 setup gadgets in favor of 5 trapper operators that all have reactions? Do you want to bring the shield operators to give your breachers heavy cover throughout the round? Or, even spicier, maybe you bring some shield ops and you pair them with operators who can stun, essentially making you invulnerable from shoot actions behind the shields. These are just a few of the options available to you when you sit down to draft a team in 6 Siege. And finally, just look at the gorgeous production on display here. Each miniature is brimming with the personalities of the operators they're adapting, making each mini easily identifiable even if you are unable to paint them. The boards are gorgeous, and both the 3D and cardboard terrain, they pop on the table with these vibrant colors, bringing each battlefield to life. These 3D gadget pieces especially are awesome because they make it easy to identify the location and the stats of each individual gadget, which is invaluable information to see at a glance when you have to compose high-level tactical strategies on the fly. The operator profile pieces are surprisingly compact, not taking up too much space on the table. I especially adore these translucent overlay pieces that represent the various smoke and fire grenades. They just look absolutely stunning on the table without actually blocking the player's vision to the board. What I love about all of this as well is the game is much more compact on the table than you'd think, which in my opinion is great because if this was too big and you had to strain to look around at all the various positions, tokens, and boards, you wouldn't be able to make the kind of informed decisions that you need to be making in the limited time that you have available to you. With the compact size, you're able to keep everything in your field of view, having all the necessary information at all times. Now, while things like what I just talked about seem like a no-brainer, not all board games prioritize the actual practical physical playing experience when designing the physical pieces. Some games' physical productions clash with their gameplay. As someone who spent the last 3 years especially playing this game exclusively in a digital space, I can tell you that almost everything about the actual physical production of this game elevates the gameplay experience and provides all these small practical solutions that all add up to bring you a very smooth and fluid gameplay process. Hopefully, as you can see, Six Siege is all about player freedom and tactical decision making. Every design choice supports these two pillars, and while there's an abundance of variety here from the operators, gadgets, maps, and modes, you're not going to find any of the usual Kickstarter bloat here. Every new expansion simply just gives you more of what already works, and with a streamlined rule system that lays a solid foundation, even with all of these options in front of you, the word that comes to mind for me when describing the design of this game is efficient. Every rule is as simple and streamlined as it can be. The iconography and key terms are clear, easy to interpret, and help efficiently communicate the necessary info you need at all times. Now, I do have a couple of critiques. There are obviously a few things that aren't as great, as there are pretty much in every game. And to be honest, this list is very small, and I think the problems that I do list here are not enough really to detract from the overall experience in any meaningful way. But I still think I should probably point them out to you. The first one is the learning curve. While I believe this is a streamlined game that you will pick up after a few plays, that initial learning curve is, honestly, it's quite steep. And something I imagine will hold a lot of people back from enjoying this game. I mentioned before that the iconography and key terms are clear and easy to interpret, and that's true, there's just a lot of them. The rules, I think, are the most streamlined they can be. Again, there's just a lot of them. For your first 1 to 2 games, it can all be very overwhelming, especially if you haven't played the video game before. And on the flip side, if you have played the video game before, while you may have an easier time learning the basics, the basic ideas of strategy, you're probably going to struggle with the quirks of relearning how each operator and piece works, because many of them are slightly changed in order to make sense for a board game over a video game. Furthermore, the skill disparity between veteran players and new players is quite high. A veteran player will probably have to handhold new players through their first several games, which for some people may be a huge turnoff. While I don't mind this teaching and learning process, some new players I've taught have remarked how frustrating it can feel to know that their opponent is holding back while they learn, and they feel completely inadequate in their ability to catch up fast enough. Now, obviously what this means is that the ideal way to pick up and get into this game is to do what Jack and I did. 2 new players picking up the game at the same time and learning at the same pace. That being said, I don't think this is a game that can't welcome plenty of newcomers. In my almost 2 years of running this channel and interacting with the community, I've seen many new players come in, and after the initial learning games, which is about 1 or 2 plays, I find that those players start to really shine, In fact, it's one of my favorite parts of teaching this game is when you see the switch flip in a new player's mind when it suddenly all just clicks. All right, let's talk about the dice again. Look, the dice are one of my favorite aspects of this game and this game's design. The 3 levels of the dice make it quick and easy to evaluate your chances of success on a given roll. Yellow is the weakest die, orange is the middle die, and red is always going to deal a lot of damage. Now, the nature of them does make you prioritize good positioning and strategy over relying on luck, like I said before. However, even still, very rarely, sometimes the dice will just not go along with you. Sometimes you'll make a gamble with the best dice and an overwhelming chance of success, and it still fails. Look, that's just the reality. Much like how in the video game, your aim can sometimes go through slumps, so too can the dice. That being said, these instances are very rare. I've rarely seen this happen, and when it does happen, you can often still win by good strategic play, even if you roll badly. For example, I once played a game against a new player where, no joke, this is not an exaggeration, I failed every single attack roll I made for the first 4 rounds of the game, and was dropped down to just 1 character left against 4. Overwhelming odds. And yet, my ability to position well and capitalize on the weak play that the attacker made when he got cocky let me win the game quite handily in the last round of the game. That game proved to me that, again, it's not about the dice. It's about the strategy and the positioning. Also, each player gets 1 free reroll token as well. So when you do have those rare bad rolls, you can use this reroll token. All right, initial setup. It can be a little fiddly and tedious to do the initial board setup with all the numerous components having to be placed in their spots and pulling all the pieces out of the boxes. And then when you're in the middle of the session, switching maps in between games could add a good 5 minutes each time because you gotta go find the map and put all the pieces on. It's not the worst thing in the world. Honestly, this is a very minor complaint, but I know some people will think that the setup and teardown of this game is really bad. I mentioned before how almost everything about the physical production of this game is thoughtfully considered to elevate the gameplay experience, and obviously I do believe that. There's just a few minor complaints that I have in this department. For one, I don't love the plastic standees that come in the box. They cover up half the art on the smaller cardboard pieces like these barricades and leaning standees. And they also, because they take up so much space on a square, cover up a lot of the beautiful map art with this sea of foggy white that kind of covers the board. So I actually replaced these standees with these clearer standees, which it lets more of the art and the colors show up on the map. However, another issue is, like the previous standees, these guys do take up a lot of space on the squares. And when you start putting these gadgets together, and then you add operators into the mix on those squares, you can see how these pieces kind of start to bump into each other, and they're taking up more space than I think they should. Another weird thing are these double-layered player boards for the tactical inventories. So they gave you these double-layered boards for your tactical inventories so that your cubes will fit in place and not be jostled, except the cubes are smaller than the spaces on the board, so these cubes still get jostled around and can fall out of place. And finally, while I greatly appreciate the additional storage box for all of the expansion operators, to be honest, it is kind of a nightmare to bring out all of these pieces when you want to select your team from all 5 years of operators. What that means is you have to search through 5 various plastic inserts, grabbing all of the various pieces that go with each operator, and then having to find those pieces again after you need to put them back in the box once the game is done. I suppose you could pull out just all the minis and all the pieces and set them on the table, but that takes up space and is very messy, and then you'd still have to put them away eventually, and now you don't remember where all the pieces go. It's kind of just a big hassle, though to be honest, I don't know what the answer to this conundrum is. This big box is certainly better than having 7 little boxes to carry around, but it's just a little unwieldy to have to deal with these 5 plastic trays, which actually is 10 plastic trays because there's 2 halves to each one, and having to set up and tear them down each time, it's a little unwieldy is all I'm saying. In conclusion though, with a streamlined rule set, a timer, and an abundance of tactical choices, 6 Siege, in my opinion, easily accomplishes its goal of both adapting the video game and creating an incredible game in its own right. It's fast, lean, tactical, exciting, and most importantly of all, so much fun. It is easily one of the best skirmish games that I have ever played. And that's what I think about 6 Siege. Okay. You've convinced me. This does sound like a really fun game. It really is. Honestly, it's easily one of my new favorite games, if not my favorite game right now. You've gotten me excited, man. Can we play a game? Oh, yes! Can we? Man. I would love to, but... Awesome! Let's get started! Don't you want to play? I do. The problem is... we're the same person, remember?